So as you continue to develop your talents and to make your mark upon the world, remember that nothing worth doing is ever easy. You'll have bad moments. You gotta love what you're doing. And if you don't, just do something else. Keep standing up always for your values. Keep loving your country. And one of the most important things, never, ever quit. Never quit. Then ask yourself, what imprint will you leave in the sands of history? What will future Americans say we did in our brief time right here on Earth? Did we take risks? Did we dare to defy expectations? Did we challenge accepted wisdom and take on established systems? In my short time in Washington, I've seen firsthand how the system is broken. A small group of failed voices who think they know everything and understand everyone want to tell everybody else how to live and what to do and how to think. But you aren't going to let other people tell you what you believe, especially when you know that you're right. I know that each of you will be a warrior for the truth. Will be a warrior for our country and for your family. I know that each of you will do what is right, not what is the easy way, and that you will be true to yourself and your country and your beliefs. Remember this, nothing worth doing ever came easy. Following your convictions means you must be willing to face criticism from those who lack courage or the guts or the stamina to take it and to do it. It's called the road less traveled.
Good evening, everybody. So this is the first edition of Grassroots Local Action National Impact. What we're doing here, we're just going to try to have an educational show for everyone. Everybody is considered a student, myself included. These are all topics that we're all going to try to go through as a group and try to work out a good resolve at the end. Before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out to Jeff and Shannon, Shady Groove and In the Matrix. They have laid the foundation for us all to be here every day doing what we all love to do. I'm just so grateful, and I could spend the next 2 hours every day just telling you guys how thankful I am for what those guys do every day. I also want to give a shout out to the people down in Florida. We got a lot of family and friends down there, and we just want to say you're in our prayers. We're keeping you in our mind all the time. So looking out for everybody. We're going to So we're going to try to start out with just a couple topics that we can go over to get started on. That's going to be what we work our way through. Eventually, we're going to try to start bringing on speakers and doing that every week so that we're actually getting on people. When we're not able to have on speakers, senators, congressmen, local people, anybody actually just taking action, we would love to hear from you. And consider bringing you in to do a show with us, interview. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Eddie, Mike, if you will bring up the first slide for our intro. So for the first topic, we're going to be going over Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised. This is a big one. Am I rubber banding for everybody?
You're fine.
5-5.
All right. So, yeah, for Robert's Rules of Order newly revised, this is how all of our meetings are held. And this is kind of what they abuse to take control of us because we just don't know how to use Robert's Rules for ourselves. So they have been studied and worked through for the past 100 and so many years. And over time, they have found and made a very methodical way to handle these gatherings so that it's not just pure chaos. All of the information today is going to be from a YouTube channel called Practical Roberts Rules. The link will be in the chat. And we're also going to be going off of Robert's Rules 11th edition book. That is the newest revised one. It is the 600 and almost 700 page edition. That is the one that we're going to be going off of because it's the most in depth and it breaks everything down. And that's how we're trying to find these small details of how we can use these set of rules for our benefit. So we're going to go to the first slide, Mr. Eddie Mike. So real quick, we're gonna just take a second to go over how the show was founded. Almost 2 weeks ago, Tuesday, 2 weeks ago, there was a couple of us in this Telegram chat, and we were all throwing ideas and examples around of how we've done things in our community and they've just fallen short. We're running into walls. So it was an organic thing that came up, the idea for this show. And necessity is the king of invention. So we really think this may apply a big part in what we're trying to do because of how it came about and how we're going to leave it open to stay organic, to stay a breathing, living thing that we have always open for topics, always open for discussion. We'll do an hour show up front. The last hour is going to be for us all to talk about the topic. So please take notes. Definitely, if you're interested in this stuff, please take notes throughout the class so that at the end of it, we can try to talk about it. That's what we want, is your cooperation. All right, so for our first slide, background info. This is just the basics about Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised. RONR is the official abbreviation for Robert's Rules, and it stands for Rules of Order Newly Revised. Again, we're going off of the 11th edition. This bylaw, your county or charter bylaws trump Robert's Rules. So that's the base, is that you have to get in and learn your administration or group, whatever you're doing, you learn their bylaws. That is what sets the main guidelines. Robert's Rules falls into place after that. Robert's Rules only apply if invoked by bylaws or parliamentary authority, like a third party. This presentation is not comprehensive. This is a 700 page book that we're going over in an hour. There's quite a bit more information in it that everybody should take time over the next 6 months to go through. If you're considering getting involved in your local communities, this is one of the ways that we can make a huge impact. Just over the past week of me researching, I have completely changed my approach in my community and how I will get involved. No longer will I be silent because I do not know how to get to an area where I can make a change. We'll go over all of that by the end of the show today. Parliamentarians cannot make rulings. That's page 465. The LL that you're going to see in the parentheses each time stands for the line number. That's just a quick abbreviation to show you where the lines, the sentences are. A and nay are what are acceptable. Nay, A and no. Nay is not acceptable. The House of Representatives do it, but they are an exception. Formality depends on situation. Informal consideration, page 530 to 531. Unanimous consent. So if the group has a unanimous consent on something, there is really no need to have the whole process of Robert's rules, make a motion, appeal, vote, all of that can be pushed to the side with unanimous consent in the form of a small group. I'll give a quick example. I would like to, does anybody have an objection for us adjourning? Hearing no objection, we'll adjourn. So that's a good example of how a room using Robert's rules can sidestep Robert's rules with things like unanimous consent where there's no real need to be formal. Robert's rules has its place, but it's not the Bible. Their bylaws are still the most important. We're going to move on to slide 2. I believe that we have Effectual Insurrection who is going to come in and help us go through this. We're going to have a couple people come in to read tonight and do a little back and forth. That's going to help with some of the material and also make it a little bit less monotonous. So Effectual, thank you for being here, brother.
Good evening, Zach, and good evening, MG Show Patriots. As we continue on to slide 3, background info continued. Ultimately, it is the majority taking part in the assembly who decide the general will, but only following upon the opportunity for a deliberate process of full and free discussion. Only 2/3 or more of those present and voting may deny a majority or any member the right of such discussion. A member of an assembly is a person entitled to full participation in its proceedings. That is the right to attend meetings, to make motions, to speak in debate, and to vote. No member can be deprived of these basic rights of membership. Page 311, 1-5. Rules cannot be suspended to abridge these rights. Basic skills, making motions, main versus secondary motions. Conditions required. To make a motion, quorum exists. No other motions, no other motions are pending. Must get recognized. When are main motions allowed? No binding order of business exists. If the assembly has no binding order of business, any member who obtains the floor can introduce any legitimate matter he desires within the objects of the organization as defined by its bylaws, at any time when no business is before the assembly for consideration. Binding order or business exists. So during new business, when chair calls, is there any further or new business questions? After officer committee report, if a recommendation is made. The form of a main motion, I move to adjourn, or I move for a recess. Example. Page 5. Basic skills, point of order, the rule. When a member thinks that the rules of the assembly are being violated, he can make a point of order, thereby calling upon the chair for a ruling and enforcement of the regular rules. Standard descriptive characteristics can interrupt. No second needed. Example, member A. And so we aspire and endeavor to be the best that we all know that we can and should be. And we should always strive to achieve, not only in principle. Member B interrupting. Point of order. Chair, the member will state his point. Member B, the gentleman's time has expired. Chair, your point is well taken. Basic skills, appeal. Page 6.
So I think you're reading a little bit ahead of us. So we're going to take it back and just go over a little bit, go over that information just a little. And
Perfect.
So Eddie, Mike, if you can, we're on the basic skills making motion slide. Let's see here. Give me 1 second.
Page 4.
Yeah, if we can go ahead and go on to the next slide, Eddie, Mike, and effectual, what we're going to do. Let's see here. That should be. There we go, Eddie, Mike. You're on it now, brother. So I'm going to act as the chair, and if you will, effectual, act as member A, and Eddie Mike, if you'll be member B. So we're just going to do this to show a quick example of, and we'll read the rule again. When a member thinks that the rules of the assembly are being violated, he can make a point of order, thereby calling upon the chair for a ruling and an enforcement of the regular rules. So given a situation to where I feel like the chair has overstepped his boundaries and he's continuing on with the meeting, I can stand up and say point of order. It doesn't take a second. At that point, the chair has to come up and explain, what he's doing, or you have to be ready to debate him and say, these are the rules that you have broken. So we're going to give a quick example. Effectual, you'll be member A, and Eddie Mike, you'll be member B.
And so we aspire and endeavor to be the best that we all know we can and should be. And we should always strive to achieve not only in principle.
Point of order.
The member will state his point.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Your point is well taken, sir. All right, so given that example, you can see how somebody that is wanting to make a motion and drag it on, hold the meeting up, and maybe tangent it off down a side trail. Another member, point of order is our way of stopping a tyrannical chair. No longer can they force us to abide by the rules. We can call them out and say, can you be a little bit more specific on those rules? And almost 99% of the time, the people are knowingly stepping outside of what they're allowed to do. It is the assembly who holds the power, not the chair. The chair is our representative there to mediate the meeting. And so a lot of the things that they are doing in our GOPs, in our other board meetings, are 100% stepping out of that realm. So Eddie Mike, if we can just go on over to the next slide. I think we're going to attempt the same thing if it's got one of the dialogues. All right, so effectual, if you will, just read the rule one more time, and then you'll play the member role. I will play the chair role, and we'll just roll this one right out, okay?
Perfect. The rule: by one member making or taking the appeal and another seconding it, the question is taken from the chair and vested into the assembly for final decision. Page 256. Members have no right to criticize a ruling of the chair unless they appeal from his decision. Standard descriptive characteristics, no need to be recognized. Example: member, I move that.
Your motion is out of order because
I appeal from the decision of the chair.
I second that.
the decision of the chair is appealed from. The chair then states the reasons for his decision and then states the question. Shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Page 259. What that means is that when challenged, the chair now has to give the decision to what he has made has to now be voted on by the assembly. Holding them accountable by the appeal is now taking the position from the chair and putting it back into the hands of the assembly to vote. Eddie, Mike, if we can go on to the next slide. All right, guys, give me 1 second just to check and see what we are on. I think we're going to be bringing in a new speaker. And who is in the lineup? I believe it's Kenny McDaddy McFadden.
Hey, what's up? I'm ready.
All righty, sir. Title, rule, effectual insurrection did a phenomenal job. Thank you, brother.
Chair engages in debate, rule violated. If the preceding officer is a member of the society, he has, as an individual, the same rights in debate as any other member. but the impartiality required of the chair in an assembly precludes his existing his exercising these rights while he is proceeding normally, especially in a large body. He should have nothing to say on the merits of pending questions. Page 394, 26 through 31. So, member response point of order. And I think Zach wants me to be the member. He is the chair, as an example.
That is correct, sir. And this is going back to the same thing, the chair overstepping their boundaries and engaging in debate. They are supposed to be a neutral party. Opinions are, they can express their opinions in certain situations, but we have the ability to call them out about that if we know the rules and stuff, the rules that apply to that. So Kenny, we need to defeat this motion because we don't have enough money in.
Point of order.
The member will state his point.
The chair is engaging in debate.
Your point is well taken. Thank you. And so let's role play that situation and let it go out a little bit further. And without somebody stepping in and challenging the chair, say through his argument, he was able to sway the assembly in favor of whatever predetermined issue was there. So is he not making the assembly do his bidding? So when one person stands up, holds the chair accountable, they're there to do their job, and it's the assembly that now steps up and majority vote makes the decision, and that's how it should be. So we always have to be, and you'll see by the end of this a humongous example of one person could stand up and really change their state's policy, but they didn't know the rules and their rights. All right, so we're going to move on. Kenny, you're still with me. Eddie, Mike, if we can switch on over to the next slide. You're up, my sir.
Okay. Chair fails to call for new business. Rule violated. After unfinished business and general orders have been disposed of, the chair asks, "Is there any new business?" Question mark. Members can then introduce new items of business. As examples in 3 and 4, page 360, 13 through 19. See also page 121, 4 and 5, 121, 9 and 11. Member response point of order. Again, I think Zach's going to be the chair and I will be the member.
All righty. And so we have to know when we're making an impact. We don't want to be standing in the crowd challenging every move that the chair makes, every counter argument that any person in the assembly has. We really have to choose our points that we're pushing these rules on adequately so that we're not abusing the rules, abusing our rights, and then over time diminishing their power. So for this example, the chair, that was the last item on the agenda under new business. The chair will now entertain a motion to adjourn. Kenny?
Point of order.
The member will state his point.
Mr. Chair, I believe you failed to call for further new business.
Your point is well taken. Is there any further new business? And this would be where we introduce a motion, a new motion that maybe is something that someone's had on their mind. Now, a lot of times, the chair is going to breeze right past this new business. You have to pay attention in your meetings because if I were to stand up during the middle of the crowd, get acknowledged by the chair and say, I make a motion that we work on 2020 election integrity. Well, we're talking about taxes for our community. So they can dismiss my motion 100% by Robert's rules. By law, they can shut down my motion because I'm speaking out of turn. So if your community group is not giving the assembly a new business time frame where we can introduce our motions, they are cutting our feet out from under us so that we're not able to make any impact, because any other time that I want to stand up and assert my rights and say I make a motion to add this to the agenda, or I make a motion to do this, I can be legally deemed speaking out of turn. So this is a big one. You have to check to make sure that they're keeping that new business on your agendas. All right, Eddie, Mike, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. Mr. Kenny, thank you for being here, brother.
So this one is parliamentarian make rules. I hope I pronounced that right. So rule violated. The parliamentarian's role during a meeting is purely an advisory and consultative one. Since parliamentary law gives the chair alone the power to rule on questions of order or to answer parliamentary inquiries, page 465, 13 through 16. And then we'll have a member response point of order. Zach again is the chair.
All right. The parliamentarian has ruled the motion out of order.
Point of order.
The member will state his point.
Parliamentarians cannot make rulings. See RONR 11, page 465, 11, 13, and 16.
Your point is well taken. The question is on the motion to ... So for this one, the parliamentarian can be brought on by the chair to have a non-partisan, non-biased role to play. And in this example, the chair is suggesting that the parliamentarian has ruled the motion out of order, and that is against the rule. So what we have to do, we point of order that we stand up, point of order. Now the chair, knowing Robert's rules, has to pretty much take that on to himself, because the chair has the right to make a motion or rule on it instead of the parliamentarian. So it's really just holding the chair accountable, whereas he's trying to pull somebody else in to be the scapegoat. Eddie, Mike, we are going to move on to the next slide, but we also have a short video. I'm just going to check real quick to make sure we're on the time frame for it. Let's see here. Chair rules motion out of order. Kenny, do you want to go ahead and take this one while I check that?
Okay, I didn't know I was doing this one, so here we go. In general response, with an appeal in ensuring debate, you have the right to speak first. At that time, explain the reason for your appeal, providing RONR page and the line number references and extremely effective. I'm sorry, I kind of messed that up. So Zach's going to be the member, or I'm the member, and Zach's the chair. And with that, I move that
your motion is out of order because
I appeal from the decision of the chair. Second.
The decision of the chair is appealed from. The chair states the reasons for his decision, then states the question on the appeal as follows. Shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Debate and vote follows. So in this one, when it's our right to make an appeal. So anytime your chair is ruling over you or making a motion, you can step in and appeal it. And then it has to be seconded. That's the one thing for an appeal. This is one that is going to need a secondary person, which it's not that difficult to have a friend in the room who can stand up when you're making an appeal, second it, and then move it on to a debate, open debate, or by Robert's rules, everybody has discussion, and then a vote. And Eddie, Mike, I think we're going to play a quick 3-minute video or a quick video for you guys. This is actually going to go on to a little bit of information of the other slides, a couple back, but it's just a good breakdown, and it's probably going to go over a little bit of the information that we did. It might cover a couple things that we missed, though. So you guys keep tuning in. Thank you for being here.
Tactic. A chair calls a voice vote incorrectly. So when you vote yay or no, right, the chairman has to listen carefully as to which gets the majority and then call that. Well, they have a temptation, I think, sometimes to be a little bit biased, and they might call it incorrectly. Whether intentionally or not, you might doubt whether it was called correctly. There's a special motion that you can do. It's called division. You can just jump up and shout, division. And if even one member of the group calls division, just one, it must happen. And there must be a rising vote, counted vote, whatever, to clarify exactly who is in the majority. Okay? That's easy to do, and it only takes one member. You don't need to get a second or anything on it. Okay? So the ayes or the noes have it. Division. A division is called for, and then some other voting method will take place that allows for a more accurate count. Imagine reading a teleprompter which announces the result of the vote before the vote is even taken.
Mr. Chairman, I move adoption of the rules of the Republican Party. The resolution. These rules will provide a strong governing framework for our convention and for our party. Thank you.
Thank you. Without objection, the witness question is ordered. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Everyone say the ayes have it.
Now, the video doesn't show that, and the TV coverage at the time also did not show it, but a friend of mine was there, and he said there was pandemonium and screaming and yelling for 20 minutes after this happened, because what they were voting on was a very important rule regarding how the party was going to be run. And 20 minutes. The people shouting USA at the end, that's a traditional thing they do, and they want to quiet down the people who are objecting to the ruling. So they wanted to drown it out.
All right, so that was a pretty good one, but we did get a little mixed up on our videos. But guys, that's an awesome example of what one person could do in that crowd. 1,000 people, they're going to an audible vote to where it is just judging, the chair judges off of the vocal vote. And if you looked at the teleprompter, the way that it was reading out, they had already wrote which decision the chair had made, because the time that they had voted audibly and the time that it took to put that information in the teleprompter, it couldn't have happened. So they had already chosen that decision, and that's what you can do when you're going off of an audible vote like that. And in that instance, all it takes is one person in the crowd standing up saying dismissal. One out of 1,000 could have took that to a actual standing vote. So it would have went from an audible vote to a standing vote where everybody has to stand and heads are counted, or some other form where they're actually doing it by numbers instead of a guess by the chair deciding. But that was a little bit down the road. We'll get into that information a little bit further in, guys. And so we're going to get back to reading. And let's see here. Kenny, was it Fed Up Nation? Are you ready to take this slide for us, dear?
Yep, slide 11.
Let's see. It's the one on the screen right now. Now, chair rules motion out of order, and you will be taking the member role, and I will be taking the chair role. We may have gotten slides mixed up at some point, so take your time, dear. We have plenty.
Okay, no, it's fine. Chair rules motion out of order. Member response in general, respond with an appeal. In the ensuing debate, you have the right to speak first. At that time, explain the reason for your appeal. Providing Robert's Rules page and line number references is extremely effective. Example, I move that X, Y, or Z.
Your motion is out of order because
I appeal from the decision of the chair.
I second that.
the decision of the chair is appealed from. The chair states the reasons for his decision, then states the question on the appeal as follows. Shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Debate and vote follows. And yes, we did go over that one twice, guys. That is my fault. We love you all. Eddie Mike, we're going to move on to the next slide. Thank you. Fed up. That was great.
Okay, chair rules motion out of order, disciplinary proceedings, rule violated. It is also possible to adopt a motion of censure without formal disciplinary procedures. Page 643, footnote. Member response, appeal. I move to censure Mr. Graham.
I second that.
Your motion is out of order. Disciplinary proceedings have not been conducted.
I appeal from the decision of the chair.
The decision of the chair has been appealed from. Shall the decision of the chair be sustained? And if you want to finish that up.
Sure. During debate, cite Robert's Rule, page 643. It is also possible to adopt a motion of censure without formal disciplinary procedures.
All right, Eddie Mike, if you want to move on to the next slide, and we'll look at it and decide. We still have another video that's going to go over a little bit of this information, so we might go ahead and play it. It is 40 after. Yeah, Eddie Mike, let's move on to the next slide, start fresh on it, and then, if you will, cue that video for us, good sir. And while he's doing that, I just want to give another shout out to Jeff and Shannon for all they do.
Scope for this presentation. I'm talking about main motions. Okay, that is what you typically think of as a motion, where you introduce business to the assembly. Okay, there are a large number of secondary motions. I'm not really talking about those right now. Just the introduction of main motions. There are some conditions to that, and that'll be discussed more a little bit later today. When are main motions allowed? This is one of the things that I'm not going to talk about a lot today, but know that if there is an agenda, a binding agenda, one that has been adopted by the group, there are only two specific times when you can introduce main motions. During new business, when the chairman calls for it, or after an officer or a committee report, if there's a recommendation made in that report. So be aware of those two times when you're actually allowed to introduce new business to the organization. If there isn't an adopted agenda, no binding order of business, Robert's Rule says you can introduce any legitimate matter at any time, as long as no other business, no other motion is on the floor at that time. So this is often used against members who want to introduce new business. They'll be out of order because it's not the right time of the meeting. Well, if you know when the right time of the meeting is, you can avoid that happening to you. Then the form of a main motion is simply, I move. You don't say, so moved, or any other variation like that. Let me also mention that when you make a main motion, it generally needs to be seconded, and somebody else needs to do that. You can't do that yourself. Here's an example of a chair who understands that fact.
Next item, resolution determining trustee position vacant.
I guess I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion made by trustee Ramirez-Lewinsky.
For discussion.
We're waiting for a second. Still waiting for a second.
You ought to know you're not going to get one. You already made your speech, and so we don't want to hear it again, to be real honest with you. So you're not going to get a second.
Dies for lack of a second. It dies for.
I understand, Trustee Segwelt.
Well, how long are you going to wait? I'm just asking a question. How long are you going to wait?
Yeah, well, I'm still waiting for a second. Still waiting for a second.
Attorney Rhodes, is there any time limit on how long you have to wait before a motion dies for lack of a second? Or are we going to sit here till midnight?
There's no time limit. The board has the right to make a motion as it does in all other instances.
Okay. Is there any procedure that we can do to end this?
Next skill, the point of order. Don't be afraid to do this. You've seen this done. If you know the rule officially, how it's declared in Robert's Rules, you'll be more confident in being able to do it. When a member thinks that the rules are being violated, he can make a point of order, which calls upon the chair for a ruling and hopefully an enforcement of the rules. All right? If you see a rule being broken, make a point of order. You don't need to wait for somebody to stop talking. You can interrupt. And you don't need a second. Just shout it out. Interrupting. Point of order. At that point, hopefully the chair will acknowledge you and let you state your point, at which point you explain what rule has been violated, and then presumably, if the chair agrees with you, your point will be acted upon. Okay. This is something that is very fast and efficient to do. It's convenient, and it can be abused. You don't want to be shooting points of order left and right for every little thing, because it will become counterproductive after a while. But when you do see a rule being abused, feel free. Now, this calls for the chair to make a ruling. Suppose the chair doesn't rule correctly. Suppose the chair says your point is not well taken and ignores your complaint about the rule. If you believe your rule is correct and you were incorrectly shut down by this, the next skill is the one that you need to use, and that is the appeal. Okay. And this is the big one, the most important one, and the one that I have found in most organizations people are totally unaware of. But it is absolutely essential to know this. Quote, by one member making or taking the appeal and another seconding it, the question is taken from the chair. The chair is taken out of it, has no more authority to decide that matter, and the decision is vested in the assembly for final decision. Okay. This is something that I see happen, or used to see happen a lot before I learned about it. The chair would make a ruling if something is out of order. People would get all angry. They'd complain. They'd do all kinds of things, file ethics complaints, all kinds of stuff like that, to no effect. Okay. To no effect because members have no right to criticize the ruling of a chair unless they appeal from his decision. If you don't appeal, the decision stands. This is the one thing that prevents a chairman from becoming the ultimate dictator of an organization. And it reflects the fact that the organization is the assembly, right? It's the assembly. That's the organization, no one individual. You don't need to be recognized to make an appeal. And the way you do it is you simply state, quote, I appeal from the decision of the chair. Somebody else needs to second that. Once that statement is made and seconded, okay, the chairman is no longer the person who makes that decision. The chairman, if he's acting correctly, will state the decision of the chair is appealed from. He'll explain his reasoning for his decision and then put it up to the assembly by putting the question, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Okay, there may be debate, there will be a vote, and the assembly can vote to overrule whatever that decision was, okay, despite what the chair said. Okay. This caused a lot of problems. When I first learned how to do this back in 2016 in my district meetings in a political organization that I was involved with, the chair didn't even understand how this was possible. Nobody did. But I said, no, here's the rule, chapter and verse, page number, line number. And it took some doing to educate people about it. But once that happened, we now have a tool that we can use to assert the will of the majority. This is the way that the will of the majority is enforced.
You know, it's our own fault that they're taking advantage of us. So we have to not only understand it, but now we have to take that knowledge and put it out into the assembly, into the chairs and the board, so that everybody is now able to act in accordance with Robert's rules. If they're manipulating it unknowingly and no one calls them out on it, whose fault is it? Theirs, but also the assemblies. So, I mean, it's on all of us to attend these meetings, to get informed. I think this class is going to be a great opportunity for us to take things like Robert's rules, because this is just one small piece of the pie. And as we work our way through all of this over the next couple months, it should really open up some doors for all of us in our local communities and how they respond to us. So we're going to move on to the next slide. I still believe Miss Fed Up Nation is on the board, dear. Would you like to start at the top?
Sure. If you don't mind me pointing out, I think 12 is a duplicate of 11, and maybe we want to go to 13.
Let me coordinate with my producer. Eddie Mike?
Are we on chair rules, motion out of order?
The dilatory one, if you go to slide 13, I think the body of 13 is right. But if the body of 12 matches the body of slide 11, so I think we can skip over that one.
Yeah, I believe it's what's on the screen. Go to that one.
Right. The 13. Yep. Chair rules motion out of order, dilatory. A motion is dilatory if it seeks to obstruct or thwart the will of the assembly as clearly indicated by the existing parliamentary situation, page 342, lines 12 through 14. It is the duty of the presiding officer to prevent members from misusing the legitimate forms of motions merely to obstruct business. He should either not recognize these members or he should rule that such motions are out of order, but he should never adopt such a course merely to speed up business. Page 342, lines 32 through 35. Member response, respond with appeal, and in the ensuing debate, explain why your motion is not dilatory.
All right, and this is a good example of someone trying to just bog down the meetings and draw them out and keep the topics, you know, kind of surface level. And so we can appeal those issues. And I think this one explains it rather well. Eddie, Mike, I think we're getting close on time. We've got 10 minutes left. We'll probably attempt one more slide. And Fed Up Nation, do you want to just take this one? I know we had a couple other volunteers tonight, but ladies, we may put you on the back burner for next week. So Fed Up, do you want to take the last slide for us today?
Sure, I'll try. Chair rules motion out of order, improper, rule violated motions that conflict with the corporate charter, constitution, or bylaws of a society are out of order, and if any motions of this kind are adopted, it is null and void. Page 343, lines 14 through 17. A main motion that proposes action outside the scope of the organization's object as defined in the bylaws or corporate charter is out of order unless the assembly by a 2/3 vote authorizes its introduction. Page 113, lines 10 through 13. Member response, respond with appeal, refer to bylaws, charter, etc. in the subsequent debate.
All right. So for this one, we'll try to break it down. A main motion that proposes action outside the scope of the organization's object as defined in the bylaws or corporate charter is out of order unless the assembly by a 2/3 vote authorizes its introduction. So let's say somebody in the audience is making a motion and it's a waste of time, say something even not acceptable. The majority can 2/3 vote that non-acceptable motion through. Now, it can still be appealed, but according to Robert's rules, the 2/3 vote can push something through even after it has been main motioned. We may have to refer back to that video. Eddie, Mike, do you want to pull that up on YouTube? And this would definitely be doing it live, guys. We're going to fill the last couple minutes with another clip from that video. Eddie, Mike, we could start at, say, like maybe 33 minutes in and let it play out, I would say, for the next. And we'll do the outro at 7:58 maybe. So let it play for four minutes. And again, guys, we are 2 weeks into all of this. The idea came through just some open conversation 13 days ago. So all volunteers that just came out of nowhere. We really didn't even pick anybody to do any jobs. The work was just laid out. A couple members stepped up and took the ball and ran with it. We kind of just woke up one morning and everything was done. So imagine after doing this for a couple months, we have more volunteers who are bringing other subjects up too, because this is the very beginning of all of this. There's so many different routes we can take this, breaking major topics down and trying to educate a group together. We can go a lot of routes with that. So we're still looking for volunteers that just want to come up with ideas, volunteers who want to bring on speakers. Say you know a friend that's in the Senate, or you know a friend that's running that's having a lot of opposition from a Rhino candidate. Let's get them on the platform so that they're able to talk about their situation, and we as a group can help them work right through it. So I think there's a lot of potential, and everybody definitely keep pushing yourselves. Please consider getting a copy of Robert's Rules 11th edition. Would be a great place to start. Keep it on your bedside table whenever you get a couple minutes. Pick it up and read it. It's not a very entertaining read, but these are things that we have to break through so that we can reclaim our rights. This one can be used at a lot of different places too. So thank you guys for showing up. It's been a lot of fun, and I think we're going to give Eddie Mike a couple minutes, but if everybody would just take a silent clap for the good man. He stepped up and held me accountable when I was wanting to drop the ball. He is an outstanding individual. We love our producers. Shout out to Wet Yeti. Eddie Mike, I believe you got us queued up, good sir.
What was that minute mark again on that?
we're going to shoot for 33 minutes in. And we're down to 5 minutes left, guys. So, yeah, I think we'll just let this play out. We'll shut it off at 8, do a quick outro, or 7:59, do a quick outro, and then have it open for an hour of discussion if anybody wants to bring up your questions.
Abide by an abomination against it. Or how about the Declaration of Independence even? That was illegal at the time. That was treason against Great Britain. It was treason, but they passed it, right? And I'm glad they did. Okay. Your motion is out of order because it may subject our organization to a lawsuit. There is nothing in Robert's Rules of Order that says it's out of order if there's a risk of a lawsuit. Right? Nothing in there. If the chair disagrees, raise what's called a parliamentary inquiry and say, okay, where is it? Mr. Chairman, what rule in Robert's Rules says we can't accept a lawsuit if we want to? So you appeal the decision of the chair. Note that the majority, not the chair, rules, right? And if the majority decides that they're willing to accept such a risk, it is perfectly within their rights to do so. Okay, I've been talking about the appeal and how you use that to overcome rulings that aren't fair. Suppose the chairman prohibits an appeal. Okay, there is actually a rule in Roberts which states when the chair rules on a question about which there cannot possibly be two reasonable opinions, an appeal would be dilatory and is not allowed. So again, if you're doing appeals for no reason other than to waste time, they are indeed out of order. But suppose it's not. I have seen 3 times in my personal experience in the recent past a chair invoke this rule here to an appeal which was totally not dilatory. Absolutely not dilatory. When close to half, at least approximately half the assembly wanted to debate that motion. Okay? So when a chair does that, what do? You appeal. There is no authority to say, you cannot appeal this decision. You can still appeal the decision, even if he says you can't. So, this motion is out of order, and because there cannot possibly be two reasonable opinions, blah, 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 there can be no appeal from this decision. What do you say? I appeal from the decision of the chair. And that's the time when I yell it out loudly when I see this being abused. All right? It'll get a lot of seconds. Okay? The chairman will rule your appeal out of order. Okay? And then your job, of course, is to, during the debate, explain why it's not out of order. Again, I like to get the assembly involved in this decision. Say, folks here, by show of hands, who thinks that that I'm trying to waste time here? Who thinks we don't need to discuss this? And get the assembly involved because they are the organization. Okay, so this happened to me 3 times. The first 2 times it worked because I didn't know the rules. Last time, just this past January, it didn't work. You need to know the rules to be able to enforce them. Remember that first clip we saw at the beginning of this meeting where the chair ruled that disciplinary procedures weren't followed? Okay. Incorrectly? Let's take a look at that clip again. I want to show you a little bit more from that same clip.
Based on this information, the chair rules this motion out of order because the action violates the rights of an individual member to due process and may subject to the body to charges of libel. Since there cannot possibly be 2 interpretations of this ruling because it's straight out of the parliamentary authority, there can be no appeal to this decision.
All right, guys. And in that last clip, what had happened is they were using a parliamentary to announce that, and he announced that the decision up for vote was not available for appeal. And that is what kind of sparked this gentleman on this path of learning what his rights are. He's got a couple videos on YouTube. He does an outstanding job. I went through quite a few different people trying to find somebody that I was really comfortable with their information and their approach. I think this gentleman has the right idea of what your rights and how you should approach those. So his I couldn't find his name, which is also kind of cool. Practical Roberts Rules on YouTube. I will drop a link to his channel. And again, guys, this has been a lot of fun for all of us, but I learned a whole lot in a couple days just cracking through all of this information. So I hope you guys did too. Please bring up some other topics. Consider maybe talking to a friend or a relative that's in some of this stuff. If you're taking action in your local community, we want you on to help us in trying to educate others about how we can make this a little bit more effective in what we are doing. God bless you all. Thank you for joining. We'll take questions for an hour. But we'll probably just unmute everybody. We're such a good group of patriots. I don't think we're going to have to keep folks muted. But everybody, thank you for tuning in, and thank you all for behaving.